So what are we trying to do? Well, we will create a support form where some users can actually send us a request. And then what we want to do with this workflow is send this support form automatically to a Google Sheet. Now, support forms are integrated by default in n8n, but the Google Sheet is not. So here is where we will need credentials to actually authenticate with Google Sheets and Google Docs in general. And this one is quite important because we will be using it quite a lot throughout our course, right? So it's important to get it right. Okay, so let's go to n8n and create our workflow. I have a new workflow here. I've called it Form to Google Sheet. So here, let's go ahead and create our form submission trigger. Okay, so we can see that we have our test URL. This is where we will call our form. We don't need authentication for this one. We can call this request. Okay, and maybe a form description if you want. Send us a request. All right, so here let's add a few elements. So for example, I will say name and name as a placeholder. I will add an email, and the element type is going to be email. And here I have email as a placeholder, and then here the final form is the request. This is going to be a text area, and here I can put request as well. You can add required fields if you want. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. So we have an on-form submission. And here we need to connect to a Google Sheets. Okay, and here we will append a row in a sheet. Now, of course, we need credentials to connect with Google Sheets. I already have one, but let's go through it step by step and actually have you set up a Google Sheets credential. Now, I'm assuming you already have a Google account. If not, obviously, you need to create one. But if you have a Google account, go to console.cloud.google.com. This is kind of the Google backend API system. Now, unfortunately, I've already created one. Not unfortunately, I already have a Google Console account for a long time. I've worked with them extensively. So what you need to do is go to console.cloud.google.com, open an account there, create an account. They will ask you to create a project, which is, my project is called n8n Work. You can call yours whichever name you like, and then you should be sent to a page similar to this, right? So once you create that account, you should see something similar to this. So go ahead and do that, and then come back to the video here. All right, so once you've done that, we need to first enable our Google Sheets API. Here you have, on the console, you have basically all the APIs from Google. So we need to enable the ones that we need. So let's go to the hamburger menu here. Under API and Services, you have Library. Okay, and here is where you find all the APIs that are available. So let's search for Sheets. Okay, so we find Google Sheets API. Of course, you need to enable it. I've already enabled it, but you need to click on Enable, and that's basically all we need to do. Now, let's move back to n8n, and here we're going to create a new credential. And this is where we will need some information. So we have an OAuth redirect URL, which we need to click to copy, and then we have a client's ID and client secret. Now, as I mentioned before, n8n has quite good documentation. So if you click on Open Docs here, it will send you to the documentation page where it details what you need to do to actually connect with that API. In our case, Google Sheets. But for now, don't worry about this. We will go through it step by step. But in any case, just make sure you copy the OAuth redirect URL. And let's go back to our Google Sheets API, Google Console, on the console cloud. So let's go back to the hamburger menu. Again, under API and Services, we have Credentials. All right, so now here, at the top you have a button that says Create Credential, maybe just me. So we have Create Credential, and here we need to choose OAuth Client ID. Remember, here we have OAuth 2. Okay, so application type doesn't really matter. Web application, the important thing is we need to add our URL here, okay, and then click Create. So here we have the information that we need. We have client ID, so let's copy that and paste it here, and then go back to client secret, copy that, and paste it here. So now we will be asked to authenticate with the system. So let's click on Save, and then we have Sign in with Google. So let's do that. Select your account here, and then click Continue. Hasn't verified, that's fine. And here you see the scope. We have only one: see, edit, create, and delete all your Google Sheets, spreadsheets. That's fine. Click Continue, and connection successful. Okay, so that would fine. You can see now that the account is authenticated. So now we have the credential up here. Now, before we do anything else, let's go to Google Sheets or to our Google Drive. And here we're going to create a new Google Sheet. And let's say we have name, email, and here we will have request. Okay, so we have that sheet, let's call it requests, so that we can find it more easily. And let's go back to n8n. So now we have the connection and we have the sheet available. So let's go and find the document. So here we have document. We drop down here and we need to find the requests. That's the one. And from requests, we have a certain sheet, which is called Sheet 1 by default. If we have a look here, where is it? Here, we have the name Sheet 1 at the bottom here. Okay, so what do we want to send? We have the values name, email, and request. Okay, so we don't have any data for the input yet, but we can execute previous node. We will get a form. And then we can fill this out. So, Feline. Okay, so that's my email, and I have the request and more cookies, whatever it is. And click Submit. The form was submitted, and we have some input information here. We can also add the date if we want to, and so on. But let's click and drag the information. So the name goes in the name, obviously. Email goes in the email, and the request goes in request. Okay? And now if I execute that, that should send the information to my Google Sheet. If I go back to Google Drive, we can see that the information is already here. Okay, so that means that our workflow is complete. We can save it. Okay, so now we can enable it. And now we have the production URL, which we can copy, and we can actually access this form, this workflow from anywhere. So for example, if I go here, I have alex@gmail.com. And hello, submit, form submitted, and then I have my information here. So everything is now automatic. It's enabled. So whenever we call that web form, we get a new input in our sheets, right? So you can integrate that web form in your website or whatever you need it. Okay, so basically that's how you would create your first workflow, and that is how credentials work. So you can see that we need to first connect to a service in order to use it. And this pattern is going to be applied to basically all the credentials that we're going to use going forward.